Let's make my Pike's Peak pattern using only a layer cake. I am using Timber by Sweetwater from Moda Fabrics. This collection is a little older, which you might have a hard time finding, but anyways, let's get started. With each 42 count 10-inch square, you are going to cut two 5-inch by 10-inch rectangles first. Then using a half rectangle ruler by Creative Grids, which I will have linked down below in the description, you are going to use the 9-inch register mark and cut your half rectangle out. Now don't forget to cut the dog ears off of your pointed corners, that way it is easier to piece when it comes time to sew it all back together again. Then afterwards you are going to rotate your mat around and cut a second half rectangle on the 9-inch marking, yielding you a total of two half rectangles per each 5-inch by 10-inch rectangle. And that's it. You will have very little waste and you only need to worry about ensuring all of your angles are cut in the same direction, otherwise you will end up with two different blocks. Lastly, there is another way to create half rectangles, but I find this method to be easier in my opinion. But once all of your half rectangles are cut, it is time to sew everything back together again. You're going to rotate your fabrics around to mix them up to create that scrappy look. And as long as you cut the dog ears off of your half rectangles, everything will line up nicely. And then you'll sew them together to form a 4.5-inch by 9-inch rectangle. Then to save some time, I sewed one more half rectangle block together because to make our block, you'll sew two half rectangles together side by side to complete our 9-inch quilt block. Now, do you need to do this step? Not necessarily, but when it comes time to lay our blocks out, it is much easier to sew larger blocks together within a row instead of smaller rectangles. So I prefer to take that little extra bit of time to form a larger block. That way it'll be easier in the long run when it comes time to piece our quilt top. And speaking of that, once all of your blocks are complete, you'll just lay each block side by side in a 6 by 7 block layout. Then you're going to sew your blocks together to form rows. And then lastly, sew those rows together to complete your quilt top. And here is what my Pike's Peak quilt top looks like all finished. One 42 count layer cake will yield you a 52-inch by 60.5-inch quilt. Two layer cakes with a 8 by 10 block layout will yield you a 68-inch by 85-inch quilt, giving you a few more options. And for the backing, I am using this black brushstroke print, and then for the thread choice, I am going with Glide in the color Willow. And here's what my quilt looks like all quilted out. I quilted one of my latest edge-to-edge quilt patterns, which I will have linked down below in the description. Also, if you would like me to quilt your quilt, I have opened up my Longarm quilting service and I will have the link for that form down below in the description as well. And I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.